Hello, am I audible?
Dr. Rex, now it is live streamed and you can start. Okay, fine.
Okay. I hope I'm audible to you. Can you hear me? Anyone can reply to you so that I can move forward. Hello,
Yes, sir, you're audible.
am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Transnationalism and transnational citizenship. It's the topic that we are going to do. So morning we have seen what is diaspora, who are all diaspora, the difference between migration and diaspora. Diaspora means community, we feeling that they have to come forward and share their characters, oneness, and they have some characteristics such as uh, well connect with their homeland and the feeling of getting back to their homeland and contributing the host land and all those things that we have seen very clearly from the characteristics of that. So in that we are going to see transnationalism and transnational citizenship. So uh, the how the person is become a transnational citizen and what is citizenship and what are the schemes that India is providing for the overseas citizenship of India. All those things we will discuss in this video. So transnational citizenship increasingly gain ground in a globalized world. So we also seen the globalization perspective, how the globalization uh, impact or enhance uh, the concept of diaspora, right? About how the when India moved to globalization 1991 for the open market, making the countries a global village, how it has uh, enhanced the movement of people across the world. So we have seen the space, we have seen the technology space, and we have seen the transport space. We have seen the media space. How this all has impact the concept of diaspora and provide multiple nationalists to the immigrants and immigrants to ensure their right both in host and home countries, right? So, what are the rights I have in the host countries and what are the rights I have in the home countries? How it has enhanced both the countries, host and home countries, and transnational citizenship differ country to country, and it's evolving concept. That's what we are mainly focusing on this paper. So transnationalism. So what is transnationalism? It is came into exist in 1920s, uh, which is the stage of first stage of World War, and it is fully formed. The transnationalism concept is fully formed uh, after the World War One. So, according to Levitt and Neighbors, defines transnationalism broadly refers to multiple ties, right? Mm. When it is multiple ties and interaction linking people or institution across the borders of nation states. So, how a person uh, is linked to multiple countries, right? Uh, it is also closely linked with globalization concept, and the web of social networks and political processes, right? So I am. It is not a country. It is also citizens is contributing to the various nations or various countries, right? And when you look into the United Nations population division report says 3.2 percentage of the total population lives outside of their origin state, right, across the globe. So people are living outside of their country, right? So the transnationalism, according to Skiller, is a process by which immigrants built social fields that together their country of origin and their country of settlement. That is called transnationalism, right? A very good definition by Skiller. A process by which immigrants built social fields. That is very, very important. It is not alone an economic field where you put remittance or something like that, or knowledge field where you contribute the knowledge. Beyond that, immigrants built social fields, means that connectivity, belongingness, link together their country of origin and their country of settlement, right? So, what are the theories of transnationalism? How it is evolved from 1997 as 1971 to 2007? There are various theories which has evolved from stage to another stage. So, in 1971, transnationalism affects diverse areas of international governance, including politics, foreign policy, social values, cultural constructs, national and international securities, and international organization. So it speaks about the various areas, the interstate policies, foreign policies, social values, and all those things. And it is mainly focusing on very, very theoretical concepts or very, very constructive areas. All right. It is mainly from nation to nation's leaders, if you see that. So, what is the interstate state politics that two countries? What are foreign policies India and China is having, or India and US is having, and speaks on national and international securities. What is the border? So, what are the security force I have? What is the training? You see sometimes Sri Lankan uh, army people come and get trained over there. So these all transnationalism, right? This is what a government perspective or a nation perspective not comes into the uh, person building, a citizen building a transnationalism. That is not the concept during 1971 when you look into the theory. When it is 1996, when apartheid deals with, brings more kind of evolved definition of transnationalism. That is, transnational connective operate through modern technology and cyberspace. This leads to local level generating transnational practices, right? So it is because of uh, globalization and because of the modern technology and cyberspace. We use the term cyberspace means internet, means lot of development in the technology, right? So that leads to a kind of local level transnational practices. So in 2007, when Handers and Alexandra Portes defines transnational is the forms of life and better integrated educationally, professionally, and immigrant is the more likely he or she is engaged in transnational activities. So it is brings into diaspora concept, and it is the immigrant or he or she is going to engage the transnational activities, not the government, not something a group, or it moreover it is a person involving in transnational activities, right? So when you look into the transnational theory, so it is immigrant build a social fields, right? So the same what Handres and Algendra Porter says in 2007. That is, professionally, immigrant is the more likely he or she is to engage transnational activities. So, what is the types of transnationalism? Right? It is a political phenomenon, social phenomenon, and economic phenomenon. So, three uh, pillars of transnationalism. So, when you say political phenomenon, it is full of the uh, uh, support that political agencies or political conditions of the states is bringing, right? So through transnationalism, the existing politics or the rules and regulations getting transformed when an individual takes a step into transnationalism. That means building a social field when developing the nation's nation's uh, building a nation's relationship, right? Uh, Government also should look into what are the policies it has to bring in order to build the relationship between the two countries. And more number of people of India lives in some countries. For example, when you say if the people are increasingly go to work in Saudi Arabia, so, what political phenomenon should take place? So, what are the changes has to be built, or what are the policies need to be brought? That is be looked into the concept. So, second is a social phenomenon, right? When you look into the social phenomenon beyond the political phenomenon, what are the social phenomenon? Is that right? What is the connectivity? For example, when you look into Malaysia, right? There are a lot of connectivity between both the countries. So what they have done now, there is no a kind of uh, visa process that is between these two countries, right? So they have stopped without visa, they can flow. So excuse me for 2 minutes. Thank you. So they can move towards Malaysia without visa. So it is a political phenomenon, but how why it happens? It's because of more connectivity between these two countries, right? So economic phenomenon in terms of remittance. So what type of the remittance process? So what is the level of remittance? What is higher the flow? What type of rules and regulations are put forth? And all those things uh, are the two various types of transnationalism. How a country connected towards another country, social field. How it is more on economic phenomenon or social phenomenon or political phenomenon, right? If, for example, Bangladesh, we have high connect on political phenomenon over here. And this war happens when there is internal issues that is happening in politics for Bangladesh. When the former prime minister was uh, was ran away from Bangladesh, India has given the place to stay, and it took care of the former prime minister of that country. What is why is the government should support it? Because of the transnationalism, because of uh, s- the support we need to provide. All right. So we have safeguarded the former prime minister of Bangladesh in order to settle down the issues that is happening in Bangladesh. So there is a lot of examples like that. Right? So when we are moving towards the U.S. Issues, when they are putting a higher tariff on us, 100% tariff and all those things, we are looking to the social phenomenon too, right? So how we are connected towards that country, how to solve it, and all those things is a uh, matter of a, a kind of what policies we have towards other countries. So I try to explain to you that the types of transnationalism sometimes all three go together, or sometimes any one phenomenon is highly demanding to the country. For example, Bangladesh is a political phenomenon. We don't have much on social and economic phenomenon, but we highly handful on political phenomenon, right? So when you look into the citizenship, so citizenship is the status of person recognized under the law of a country as a belonging to it. This is a simple uh, definition or understanding of citizenship. So when I say I am a citizen of India, it is a status of a person, status of mine, recognized under the law of the country as belonging to it. So I have to abide to the laws, rules, and regulations, constitution of that country. In international law, it is membership to a sovereign state. We acquire citizenship by accident of birth. It is both right and obligation, right? So how I have a citizenship of India? By birth, nothing beyond that, right? So it is both the right and obligation. So to obey to the rules and regulations is my right as well as my obligation. So there are various types of citizenship. What are the ways I can get my citizenship? There are various ways. Uh, just sanguines means right of blood, become citizens by blood, parentage, or heritage. So by that I get the citizenship, right? And just solely means that rights of soil, citizenship determined by the place of the birth where I was born, right? So that US is taking a step on that, right? If the people come to work in US and get married, and if they give birth to a child, that the child gets the uh, citizenship. Means that it's a rights of by the place of birth. But US is looking to that. When the new government, Trump's government, looks into this as a problem. So it is not just you give birth, can the child be a citizen of that US? So they're looking into it, they are changing the norms and all those things. And third one is matrimony, means that person acquires citizenship by marriage. So marrying a person of that country, you get a citizenship, right? You see a lot of movies, uh, then ties the knot and gets the citizenship of that country and all those things. And naturalization, uh, globalization of movement of people from one place to another lead to acquire citizenship of the country through matrimony or living for a certain period of time. So if you live for 15 years and more, 10 years and more, or 20 years and more, you get automatically a citizenship, right? Excluded categories like groups like slaves, women, indigenous groups, Gulf countries, they have this policy for migrant workers, right? So they don't give citizenship to those people. So in past, women are excluded from getting a citizenship, even for voting and all those things. We have a lot of things to look into that, right? So these are the various uh, types of citizenship when we are speaking on, when we are looking into the citizenship, right? A country may have one form of citizen providing citizenship, or two forms or three forms altogether. Okay, it's country to country, it varies, and it has based on the constitution. So transnational citizenship, when you speak on transnational citizenship, multiple identifies and alliances, cross-national or multi-layered membership to certain societies. People who live their lives across the borders of two or more nation states, participating in the normative regimes, legal and institutional system, and political practice of these various states. Right? That is called a transnational citizenship. You have uh, various more than a states, right? You have more than a country. You have a citizenship. It's called a transnational citizenship. So overseas citizenship in India, right, means that India was introduced in the year 2005 by amending a Citizenship Act 1955. Overseas Indians, right? OCI. So provide citizenship of overseas citizenship of India. They live abroad, but they have the citizenship in India. That's called overseas citizenship of India. It has certain period of time that they have to renew it, and they have the certain powers vested with them by having the overseas citizenship of India. So this unit talks about the citizenship, types of transnationalism, and uh, the importance of transnationals, and all those things. Right? These are the main areas when we look into the concept of transnationalism. Right? And move to the other area. So the block two, when we are talking on Introduction to Diaspora. The block 2 speaks about influence of diaspora networks on policy making and citizenship practices. Okay. So how diaspora networks on policy making plays a role. So diaspora networks. So what is diaspora networks? So in simple term, diaspora networks speaks about how the diaspora people maintain their connectivity with their homeland, right? So what are the ways they are connecting? How far it is just sending money or beyond that, right? What are the ways they are connecting? Are they able to influence the host land policies, government policies, and all those things? Speaks about diaspora networks, right? So when you talk about diaspora networks, it's immigrant communities maintaining connections with their homelands. When you look into the broader usage used for Jews exile, now refers to all displaced communities. Right? So we see in the morning what is how the Jews from Jews only we have taken this term diaspora, right? Diaspora means dispersion or scattered, right? So that is we have seen the history of Jewish people. So in this unit, we learn about the phenomena of diaspora networks and the nature and characteristics of these networks, and examine the implication of diaspora networks. What are the characteristics of diaspora networks? That is very much important, right? It's a real and psychic connection to the homeland. Real means here a physical connection, so people move here and there. And psychic connection is very, very important. How psychologically I am connected, all right? Mentally I am connected to the homeland, all right? It's very much important how often we connect over the phone towards the of people in homeland who are my relatives and all those things. This small activity when we are there, but it speaks about the psychic connection to the homeland, right? It's a very, very basic of diaspora formation, right? And maintain socio-economic, cultural, and political ties, right? Well connected towards their homeland people, maintain socio-economic, cultural, and political ties, and third one, formal and informal network based on ethnicity and origin, right? How I am connected towards my people in the homeland and host land, right? Formal and informal networks based on ethnicity and origin. These are the fundamental characteristics of diaspora networks. Features of diaspora networks. So you have first one is a web of social relationship benefiting participants and includes economic, trade, investment, and social, family, cultural networks. Right? So you are in a different part of the world, and you have a well connect, well connectivity, and you have even economic investment. You put social, family, cultural networks, and all those things. It's a club of everything: economic, cultural, social. So type of networks. The two type of diaspora networks plays a role. One is social networks based on ethnic, religious, family, clan, and kinship ties. So First and foremost, it starts with social networks. So morning we discussed about how the people will be get connected. It's probably based on religious sometimes or ethnic. So for example, people of Karnataka comes together in Saudi Arabia, right? And they have a community of people of Karnataka being one. It's so diaspora networks or people of Bihar. So ethnicity. Ethnicity means from the same place or same origin, right? And you also get connected as religious. So you sometimes when people of India goes to Saudi Arabia or some other uh, country where other religions are high, then they tend to form a, uh diaspora community based on religion, right? And they share a common values and everything. So religious, family, clan, right? A caste based, right? Or kinship, right? So there is possibility. Right? And the second part of types of networks is the entrepreneurial managerial skill based on purely on economic networks and technological connections, right? For example, people of selling coffee, okay, or tea estate, or selling tea. If they form an entrepreneurial networks over there, then it is people based on economic networks, right? Or if, for example, they export coffee powder to abroad, right? So these people form a network over there in a particular country based on economic networks or technological connections, right? So the types of networks, diaspora networks, are in are in two ways. One is social networks, and all the next is economic networks. So we have discussed more on impact of globalization. To brief on it, it enhanced by transport and ICT, information communication technology, facilitates knowledge transfer and increases the brain drain. So we discuss on the brain drain, right? Brain drain towards brain gain and economic contribution, right? Trade and investment links between home and host countries, channeling resources for business and entrepreneurship, right? So these are the both economic contributions uh, by Indian diaspora system. So trade and investment links between home and host land and channeling resources for business and entrepreneurship. What is a social contribution? It promotes cultural exchange and ethnic identification, helps new migrants to adapt to host countries. So very much important is a social contribution. All I say, uh, there are certain examples if you read newspaper and all those things. Uh, Sometimes we are able to influence other countries' government policies in terms of when some punishment is given for our people, right? Uh, I give an example. There is uh, 1 year back, the incident had happened in Oman, where you might have also read in the newspaper. A lady got married, a person in Oman, all right, got married, and they lived for a year. And that man, then they were in conflict, and after their marriage, that man has taken the passport of this lady who was from Kerala, right? So they started arguing, and he is not giving uh, her passport. and confiscated and stolen that. So, being a nurse has some medical understanding. She has given some dose of mild level in order to make him to kind of doziness or kind of leaving reducing his consciousness. All right. So she is giving the dose which is bearable, which will may not lead him to die, but at the same time may get the passport. So continuously she was doing it, and she got the passport. At last, the person died. Right now, the relatives of that man filed a case in Oman, stating that it is my brother was murdered by this lady, and it has been proven that he was died because of the dose that the lady has given on to him. And the both side the hearing is going on, and she was given capital punishment, means that she has to be killed by the country by hanging or shooting whatsoever. There is another option where the the family can forgive her. This is second option. If the family forgives her, then she has to give some money to the family. That is called blood money. Blood money. But the country keep on refusing, not forgiving, and all those things. Now the government interferes. The central government, the government of India interferes into it, and the death penalty has been postponed again and again. At last, our country, is able to influence the Roman country and rescued her from penalty and gave some blood money to the family. So it is a literal example how a country, a state can move towards the concept of influencing, right? Because of most of the people are in women, and there is a contribution, there is a foreign policy with women, connectivity with women, right? Any other country matter, right? So here we have to understand how the foreign policy plays a role, all right? And the social contribution promotes a cultural exchange at ethnic identification, helps new immigrants to adapt to host countries, right? So very much important to look into all those things. That is social contribution, all right? So Diaspora Network Alliance, DNA, framework 6 channels, all right? So very much important how the Diaspora Networks aligns with philanthropy, it aligns with volunteerism, entrepreneurship, capital markets, tourism and astrological trade, advocacy and diplomacy. So let us look into one by one. The Diaspora Network aligns with the philanthropy. How people support the other country, donate, right? Right. So how people support in terms of Gujarat earthquake? Hmm. Probably you may aware in 2000, somewhat in 2011 or somewhere, there is a strong earthquake in Gujarat. So what are the philanthropy attitudes of the various countries people live, right? So there is a high amount of remittance, contribution, and volunteerism, right? So people volunteer across the globe to support, right? Philanthropy is different from volunteerism. Philanthropy is sometimes in terms of money. So philanthropically, we give certain money or assets or some infrastructure or some kind of values. Right? Volunteerism is in person, right? We go and support, right? Uh, Entrepreneurship. So starting entrepreneurship activity, investing on it in the host land or homeland, right? Involving in capital markets, right? Supporting tourism and trade, advocacy and diplomacy, where at a state level we are involving into it. All right. So these are the Diaspora Network Alliance, which gives a valid contribution towards the six areas, six channels, right? So what are the challenges? Here we have dual loyalty issues. A person has two countries, right? One is homeland and hostland. Means that he has to do dual loyalty issues. So he has to support the hostland as well as homeland. And political and economic tensions between host and home countries. There is also an issue when there is a tension rises, right? So political situation between US and India plays a role for a person to support the country or bring entrepreneurial activities. Whereas all of a sudden, if US imposes 100% of tariff because we buy oil from Russia, that brings an economic tensions and political tensions to the people live in US and normal activities they have between the both country, and it also affects the diaspora connectivity, right? Not only between India and US, as well as people live in US to be connected with Russia, right? So these are the various areas that we need to understand when we talk about the diaspora formation. Role of diaspora in host and home countries. When you look into the host country means where we live or where we stay, right? In simple term. So host countries facilitates integration and participation in socio-economic activities. Right? It must facilitate. If it doesn't facilitate, then it's difficult for us, right? And as role of diaspora to act as a cultural ambassadors, right? So an ambassador between host and home countries, the connectivity, right? So home countries encourages investment knowledge transfer, very much important. So we encourage people from abroad of Indian origin to invest in India, contribute to entrepreneurial activities. So that in the morning I told, please see and visit or check whenever, watch news whenever uh, 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 our Indian Prime Minister visits other countries for any purposes, right? So see how the process is going on, and it strengthens global influence through advocacy, right? So how the foreign countries or the government is advocate involved in advocacy, how the Indian national supports the advocacy and all those things, right? So example of diaspora network impact. Uh, so Indian diaspora contributing to IT and healthcare sectors, need to see, right? In India, Indian diaspora contributing to IT and healthcare sectors, information technology and healthcare sectors. We find lot of doctors, engineers are in US and other countries, even in China, and dominating over there, contributing a lot. Especially when you talk about India, IT personals are uh, more in abroad. Our knowledge is being given to other countries in the in the health sectors as well as IT sectors. And if we look into China, diaspora investments transforming their tech industry, right? They contribute more on technology, right? In the same way, South African diaspora collaboration between skilled expertise and local professionals. They contribute a lot. Right? So these are the diaspora networks impact, when you say, of various countries, right? So when you say diaspora network, it is between homeland and hostland, how they are getting connected in both the countries. That's very much important when you are dealing with, and how in various forms that we have seen, philanthropy, volunteerism, entrepreneurship, capital markets, tourism, and nostalgic trade, advocacy and diplomacy. In what ways they are contributing more? That is very much important when we are looking in the aspect of diaspora network alliance, right? And what a country it is mostly look, what way they are contributing, right? Whether they are volunteer, whether they built on entrepreneurship, capital markets, in what percentage of their remittance is being used, right? So diaspora influence on policy making, right? Very important area where we talk about the brain gain, and all this. Diaspora connect their countries, how they connect their countries of origin with the host countries, and how they play as a diplomatic agent influencing global relations. That's what this unit is discussed about. Uh, so it is an understand of what we understand from this unit is that soft power of the diaspora. We discuss on policies for engaging the diaspora and diaspora's role in foreign policy. So we look into the understanding perspectives. So soft power and diaspora. What is soft power? Right? It is non-coercive influence through culture, values, and foreign policies. Okay. What is non-coercive influence? It is not something like you go with a Pakka policy and all those things. It is through uh, less legitimative through culture, values, and foreign policies. For example, Indian diaspora role in promoting India's cultural identity, right? In host countries, right? So the tools of soft power. What are the tools of soft power? So we have seen it is the non-coercive influence through cultural values and foreign policies. Uh, Non-coercive influence. So when you say tools of soft power, it is a culture, education, and economics. And diaspora as an emotional, political, and economic investment, right? Are the tools of soft power. Means they influence the government or they influence the local authority. First of all, based on the number of people there, as with the strength of the diaspora connectivity network, they influence the government through their culture, education, and economics, which is a non-coercive influence. And they develop the soft power. So we know that soft power is influenced through culture, values, and foreign policies, right? So global trends. Global diaspora trends, increasing engagement in host countries, socio-economic, political activities, and significant remittance and investment to home countries. Right, that is a global diaspora trends. So you increase your engagement in host countries. Very much important. How far you are engaging in your host countries in terms of political activities and economic activities. You see sometimes in the news how Indian origin people become elected as a mayor of the particular state in US or particular region in the US or Canada, sometimes in East Asian countries. You see frequently these news means that that shows the influence of people or engagement of people rather than influence in their host countries and significant remittance and investment to home countries. All right. So how far you are giving remittance means money to your host home countries plays a role. It's a global trends. So Indian diaspora engagement policies. So how the India has brought it, right? So India has brought three areas like Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs, OCI card providing lifelong visa and employment rights, right? Overseas citizenship of India, that is OCI card providing lifelong visa and employment rights to the Indian citizens in overseas. Pharmacy Bharatiya Divas to recognize diaspora contributions. Right? So separate portal is given. You can go and visit Pharmacy Bharatiya Divas to recognize diaspora contribution in terms of remittance, right, and other contribution towards economic development and cultural development of the country, right. So diaspora in foreign policy acts as a lobbying force in host countries and example Indian American support for US India agreements. So far we have discussed these things. We discuss this later in the next class, but any doubt till now, you can ask questions.
Yeah, Master Raj. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Any doubt you can
Hello.
ask.
Can you hear
So
me?
this is what we need to understand about the diaspora connectivity and contribution. So very much important in terms of how we are dealing with host countries and home countries. That's the main uh, and what to say main thing we need to understand. That's a baseline of what is diaspora networks and all those things. So we meet in the next class and discuss further. Thank you.
Hello, Sasya. Sada, can you turn on the sharing?
Oh, this is so sorry. I was looking everywhere for where the thing is.
Okay. Hi,
Sorry.
Hi, Sasya.
Abha, tell me.
I can't
Tell
share.
me.
I can't share. Can you turn on the sharing? Can you turn on the sharing, please? Sasya, can you hear me?
Sasha.
Very
Okay.
clear.
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Sasha, can you make Abha host? Can you make Abha host because you are a host now?
I'm the host. Maybe I stayed back since the previous session. I'll do that.
Just make me the host.
Participate. Let me. Or maybe I should get out of the thing and then. Oh,
And
just
then
let
log
me.
in again. Then log in again.
No, I can do it. And I am making. Okay, I made you host.
Made whom host? Okay, you are the host now. Fine. Fine. I got it. Yes.
Amazing.
Okay, so you don't need to.
Now you can change Abha.
You can.
change.
Take it.
Nice.
Perfect. Can you see my PPT?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay, and just tell me whether the PPT moves or not.
Yeah, I'll do that.
1 minute. So I am now moving it. Has the PPT moved?
Yes, all good. All good.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So we'll wait for another 2 minutes,
Yeah, sure.
2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll start.
Definitely.
So where are you joining from, Sasya?
So I am in Hyderabad.
Oh, you're in Hyderabad. Okay.
And yeah,
Huh?
nice to meet you.
Sorry?
I said I'm very happy to meet you, Mr. Chawla.
Okay. I'm also very happy to meet you, Sasya. Is
Yeah.
that your first name or your last name?
That's my first name. My
Okay.
last family name is Mariboina. And I have another type it.
So what does
my-
that make you? A Telugu, a what?
I'm a Telugu person, yes.
You are a Telugu person. Okay. Hi, Nikita.
Hi, Nikita. Finally.
Sir.
I could not make it in the morning because there were so many things happening around. Some
Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine.
local festival
the-
called
See,
happening.
the thing about these classes are the fact that everybody is doing something. So whenever it is convenient, it's always good to be in a class because that way you are sharing stuff, you are getting multiple perspectives. And the way at least my class runs is the fact that you can stop me at any moment of time or interrupt me at any moment of time to ask a question or to share something that you think is relevant or is important for the other people in the class too. So that way it is much more an experiential learning rather than a person doing a monologue.
Yeah, makes
In a-
sense. So I agree.
Nikita, where are you joining from?
Hi, Mr. Chawla. I'm Nikita. I'm from Chennai.
Okay, Chennai.
Yeah.
And
And
both of you, bolo.
no. Yeah, you please continue.
No, you were saying something. I am.
Actually, I've completed my economics degree. So, and now I'm interested in this degree so that I could know more about intercultural relations and how people move to different places. So, from your previous class,
Okay.
I was quite intrigued by the way how you took your classes. It was quite nice to have someone who can
Okay.
explain you other than just for marks and all. It was quite nice.
Okay. Okay. I'm glad you liked it because then it becomes time well spent.
Yes.
Sasha, you were not there, so I don't know how we are going to take that, but now that you are joining, we will over the next whatever weeks, we will go through various units. We have 3 units per per block of per module. So we'll try and make the best out of it. And anyway, you have the self-learning module. As I was telling in the earlier class, the self-learning modules are supposed to be self-learning. I mean, they are simple enough for self-learning, but sometimes, true to an academic style, they become a little dense and circuitous. So in that case, it's always good to cross-verify from an AI assist or Google, and then always cross verify anything you pick up from internet, because especially the AI assist is notorious for giving wrong information. So if you were to put a prompt in an AI assist in terms of give me references or give me some readings to this particular topic, it can just pick up anything random and give it to you. And you might think it's actually the case. And there are enough examples on social media where people have kind of, picked up without realizing it, and they have got all wrong information. So it's always important on the internet to cross check.
I can't agree more. Yeah, you're right. It's quite yeah, I get what you're saying.
So
Um,
I always add that as a word of caution. See, these are good tools. The AI assist today has become a very important tool in terms of searching, but it's always good to cross verify.
right.
Okay.
Dr. Chandra, where are you from? I'm sorry, this is the
That's
first
perfectly
time.
fine. That's perfectly fine. So I have been teaching migration and diaspora since some years now. And
Nice.
I am a visiting professor in IP University, and I am an academic counselor in IGNU. I teach this subject. And I also I teach an eclectic set of subjects. I teach on human rights. I teach on mass media, mass communication. I'm an author to 2 books on mass communication, which you can find on Amazon. Those books are available on Amazon. And then
Nice.
you can always Google me and figure out who and what I am.
I'll do that.
Today, I always say that this particular internet has become a great lifeline for finding out a whole lot of information. Okay, I think without much ado, it's 5:10. Let's start. Whoever wants to join can join later. Uh, okay. Can you guys see my PPT?
Very
Yes.
much.
Okay. Just give me a sec. Okay. I was just taking a screenshot for documentation. So we're going to be doing this MDI 1, MDIE 1, and in which block 1 we are doing gender and migration patterns and trends. And we look at the unit 67, history and demography. So this becomes an interesting thing because when migration studies started, more often than not, most scholars tended to focus on the male gender. It was by far thought, understood, or presumed that the only people who migrate are males. In fact, the interesting part is when the indentured labor happens. Are you both aware about the indentured labor? Sasya, Nikita,
Sorry.
Not
Could
very
you
much. So,
do you have any idea about the indentured labor?
I guess
could you
indentured labor is people who are being migrated due to can I give an example that during colonial period, some of the Indians were used as indentured labor in
Okay.
countries like Seychelles and all to do menial jobs. Am I right?
Correct, correct. They were not just some people, there were millions of people who were taken as indentured labor. Now, interestingly, how the indentured labor came. So I'm going ahead of the time because you are still at the initial part of, this migration and diaspora studies. So typically what happened is when the colonization started, initially they started picking up Africans as slaves till the time slavery was abolished. And then this Europeans devised this idea about indentured labor, where there was a contract on which the labor was taken. Though technically there was a contract, but effectively most of the time there was subterfuge. They were not told what it was, and in a lot of cases there was deceit. They were forced. And once these people were taken to places like Fiji, Seychelles, Trinidad, Tobago, East Africa, various places, including Myanmar, they come under different categories. They got stuck. And now think about the fact when people are traveling to such far distances on ships, more often than not, one tends to presume they were all males because males are normally expected to do the labor where, our understanding, the stereotypical understanding is that women are taking care of the houses, where males are doing work outside. But you'll be surprised to know there were a large amount of women on this, and all accounts of indentured labor, or in fact, in lots of narrations on migration, the focus was always on the male. Now, interestingly, the male and the female differs in terms of understanding, experience, perspective, and so on and so forth. It was much later that the migration studies started including the female gender. So now let's look at how this works out. So our objectives are in terms of understanding the complex interrelationship of gender and migration, significance of studying gender and demography, crucial sectoral and occupational dynamics with migration and gender, understanding of ILO provisions, analyze challenges relating to gender migration data. Again, as I've given a preface, it was stereotypically understood that migration only happened with males. Now, all the studies looked at male and his problems or the way he perceives migration, totally ignoring the female part. We'll start with first the difference between gender and sex. There is, and more often we tend to look at sex and not the gender. Sex is the preferred item while referring to biology, while gender is the preferred word when referring to behavioral, cultural, and psychological traits typically associated with the biological sex. The sense of sex, label male or female, assigned at birth based on such factors as chromosome, genitals, and hormones. There's an essential difference between sex and gender. Are you with me, guys?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Very much, very much.
People who feel their sex doesn't align with their gender may identify as transgender or non-binary. Today, there are multiple categories which happen. Uh, for example, in India, we still more often than not broadly understand it in terms of male and female. We are still we are coming now to grip about the gender aspect. There are some people who are much more understanding and sensitized. There's a large swath of people who still look at male and female, and there's a binary understanding. Gender is relational and refers not simply to women or men, but to relationship between them. Deeply rooted in almost every culture, changeable over time and space. Variation in gender conception can be found both within and between cultures. And this has been prevalent across cultures. People have always looked at a binary male female, Though as the gender studies evolved and as societies evolved, the understanding of gender and the difference between gender and sex has evolved. Analysis was not emphasized while studying migration patterns for long. Migration literature either deliberately ignored the participation of females or assumed, and again, the invisibilization of women. So you look at so many things, how we invisibilize women. For example, when we look at urbanization and public spaces, and you will see that we have kind of invisibilized women. How does a woman affect public spaces? In fact, we tend to invisibilize a lot of people. Today, when you look at excess, and in the first session, we talked about mobility. When we talked about mobility and access, you will see a lot of public spaces are inaccessible to, let's say, children, to the older people, or to women. A simple thing is the fact, I will give you a very interesting example. So we have a park near my house. There is which is frequented by men, women, older, younger, and all that stuff. So they have a washroom for the male, but nothing for the women. It's almost, that women have become invisible in that public space. The needs are the same, the biology is the same in terms of the nature calls and so on, so. And that's how, when migration studies, kind of invisibilized it, they could not understand that women have specific needs, specific, way to look at things, specific, security issues or non-security issues, and how to go about it. Major influencing factors in all stages of international migration. Gender differentials are often apparent aspirational and motivations of people to move abroad and their migration pathways, choice of destination, settlement experience in their new host countries. Recent decades, gender specific studies of migration discuss feminization of migration. In fact, today, when we look at the migration patterns, almost about 49% of migrants are women. And in fact, it's over a period of time, and that is the terminology that my people have, the scholars have now started using, calling it the feminization of migration, where female migrants moving abroad independently for work or education has occurred in greater number than ever before. In fact, I was reading this book on indentured labor, where there were a lot of single women who traveled along with this indentured labor, male indentured labor on the ships. There was this story called Jahajin, where this female, along with the two children, is traveling on the ship. And there are other women who are traveling alone. It was just that most narratives earlier did not at all put their gaze or focus on the women. It was all a male-centric narration. Now, with more and more women moving out independently, it was always presumed that women is dependent on the male. So, if you are able to study the male, you are able to study migration and so on and so forth. Better understanding of the migration experience of women, men, and other gender groups. And inevitably, the experiences are different. What a male experiences is different from a female. In fact, now there are more and more studies for the LGBTQ plus to look at the fact how they experience migration. Double disadvantage for female migrants who account of their sex and migrant status are more likely to face discrimination or mistreatment in comparison to male migrants. So it's a perception. And the more in academics, the more perceptions you have, why in academics, in life also, the more perceptions you have, the better is your understanding of a situation, because all situations are complex. And anytime we think that it is one factor which affects a particular thing, that that terminology is called deterministic, because nothing in life is deterministic. There are multiple factors at play. See your own experience. For example, Nikita, your decision to join this course would have multiple factors. You might say one, or you might think one, but at the back of your mind, there might be multiple factors at work. There
Sure.
always is.
Yes, sir.
So that's how it is. Especially during irregular migration and asylum seeking situation, there's a pressing need for better protection in inequalities against gender-based violence and exploitation. Because remember, migration is the process of moving. More often than not, that movement, and as I was saying in the first class, when we talk about migration, we normally talk about international migration. And international migration starts from a home country to a host country, and it could go through a transition country. And the whole process itself could be, could have multiple experiences. Gender-specific data, including migration data, is subject to a number of elements of international commitment. So there are all these international more and more scholars, more and more organization now are waking up to the fact that women become an important part of the migration process. And again, as I was talking in the first class, unless you have data, how do you plan, make policies, figure out what is happening? Otherwise, it all becomes a political rhetoric. You can read more about sustainable development goals. You can Google sustainable development goals, seeks to eradicate inequalities, overarching aim of ensuring no one is left behind. So that's the background. Two of the most typical measures are migrant stock. We talked about this in the first class, migrant stock and migration flow. Stock is what, if I was to sample a place or a locality and say how many people are in that area are there who have not been born in that country or in that country, is what is stock. And flow is how many people at an airport come in and how many people leave. That is the flow. And stock and flow are both data to compute how much international migration is happening. And remember, these are approximations. They have models based on which they are able to estimate the migrations. Stock are count of people at a given point who reside in a usual country of residence that is different from the country of birth. Flows are count over a given time that have changed their country of usual residence. Stock data is easier to collect than migration flow data, because remember the fact a lot of migration happens on an illegal route or an undocumented route. There are multiple reasons why people migrate as you go through this course. There are economic reasons, there are non-economic reasons. You will go through that. Historically, migration patterns have shown gender dimension. Men historically dominant as migrant, often for work, trade, or conquest. However, women have always been involved, sometimes accompanying families, migrating independently for marriage, work, or as refugees. Women have done everything what men have done historically. There is nothing unique which happens today. The scale might change, the quality might change, but early migration, men more likely to migrate for work. Women often migrated to join family members or as a part of family migrations. Shifting patterns, rise in women migrating independently, including for work, greater diversity of migration pattern. Circular migration is when you go from A to B and then come back to A, and then go from A to C and then come back to A. So for example, when you go for short-term work or you go for education, and then you're coming back, then you're going somewhere else. These are circular migrations. While the gap between male and female is narrowing, male migrants still slightly outnumber female migration at the global level. Again, when we look at regional trends, just a sec. When we look at regional trends, you will see that some places there are more women migrants. For example, Europe has more women migrants. Other places might have less. Regional variations. Regional, for example, Europe and North America have more female international migrants than male. Feminization of migration is a term you will see being used pretty often. Increasing number of women migrating independently, including as heads of households, and growing proportion of women in migration flows. Are you able to hear me out now? Are you following me and you can hear my voice?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Following.
perfect. At any
All
moment
good.
of time, if you think I'm not audible, just put it in the chat or raise a hand so that I can see.
Okay.
They'll do that.
Okay, factors influencing gender and migration. Couple of factors: social norms and cultural expectations, economic opportunities, family dynamics, forced displacement. So even the societal attitude towards women leaving their homes and their level of autonomy plays a significant role in whether women migrate. So for example, when a country puts a rule saying that, oh, we want to look at the security of the women, that's why we want the family to authorize whether the women can move or not, is what is called a restrictive policy. So, and as I was saying in the first class, try and relate to your own experience, and you will figure out you are much able to relate to the subject in terms of migration and diaspora. So, for example, look at the fact when the society, when you look at India, and when you look at our cities, the society would say or tell the women not to go outside because of security issues, rather than make sure that the public spaces are accessible for women. That more often than not is a restrictive way of thinking for the society, a sort of a patriarchal way of putting it for the society. So rather than improve something, you try and prevent something from happening.
So true.
Social norms and cultural expectations. Then economic opportunities. How much of an opportunity is there for women vis-a-vis men? In both origin and destination countries affect migration patterns. Family dynamic, family structures, migration patterns, ability of women to migrate independently, influenced by family dynamics. So in families where girls or women are given that autonomy or have the agency, you will see more migrations. Then there is, of course, the forced displacement. Women and children are disproportionately affected by forced migration due to conflict, persecution, natural disasters, often leading to increased vulnerability. The vulnerability which males, feel is different from the vulnerability a female feels. The vulnerabilities are there for both. There is never a criteria where the men are not vulnerable. They are vulnerable in a different way. Women are vulnerable in a different way. Demographic implications. Shifting age and skill structures lead to change in the age and skill composition of both sending and receiving areas, potentially affecting demographic structures. Feminization of agriculture. In some region, out-migration of men can lead to feminization of agriculture as women take on more agriculture work. Today, places in India, for example, Uttarakhand, men, because of lack of work, men migrate out. It becomes a feminized household. Women are taking care of the household. women are taking care. In a lot of rural communities, women are now taking care of agriculture, they're taking care of households because men have moved out to the cities because of lack of work. And the same happens on a nation level. Population redistribution, migration, both international and internal, lead to redistribution of population within and between countries, which have other consequences. For example, there is this case study of decrease of sex ratio in Haryana. I live in the state of Haryana. In Haryana, the sex ratio fell down to about 769 to 1,000 women, the 1,000 men to 769 women. The implication was there were no brides for young men. The implication of this was Haryanvi men were marrying Keralite girls. Now think about the fact how a Keralite girl changes the Haryanvi culture. And inevitably, there were news items of multiple girls from a particular village marrying multiple boys in a Haryana village. Look at the change of cultures which would happen. Look at the politics behind it. What would change in terms of community, in terms of society? There were cases of Haryanvi men abducting northeastern women and bringing them as wives. Look at how the society would change, the conflicts in society that would come. Today, we are seeing a large amount of anti-immigrant rhetoric is because of various reasons. Now, there may not be a major demographic shift. There may not be major culture. There are certain cultural changes, but it can then become a political issue if not handled correctly. Population redistribution leads to redistribution of population, and redistribution of population leads to changes of culture, leads to all kinds of implications. Then there is an intersectionality. Not only the factors shaping migration, other factors like class, ethnicity, age also plays a crucial role. So, for example, women in the lower class have more agency than women in the higher class. Ethnicity, religious category. In certain religions, women have more agency than in certain religions, or it depends on the family. Age, empowerment versus vulnerability. Migration can empower women, increase autonomy and economic. It can expose them to increased vulnerability, exploitation, and discrimination. Hence, gender responsive policies. But a policy can only come once you are able to measure, once you know what is the situation. Sex-specific migration trends and pattern. 19th and 20th century international migrants largely composed of economic and colonial settlers. Settler colonizers had a relatively balanced sex because they moved as a family. Between 1840 and 1920, the global labor migration became more male dominant. Initially, it started as the slave trade, more males. It demanded temporary male workers to build infrastructure and work on plantation and in heavy industries. So it's skewed towards males. Again, you need to understand a very good way to understand today is to go back in history and see how it evolved. And more often than not, our history gives a good understanding of why things are what they are today. Are you guys with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Before
perfect. Anytime, as I said, you can interrupt anytime.
Sure.
1920s increased regulation and immigration in many countries pushed global migration towards a balanced sex distribution. National laws increasingly restricted male-dominated labor migration, and hence women and families became a large share. For example, US, initially had this, regulation about families. Later, they overturned that. Whenever they used to give this H1 visa for a male migrant. The spouse or the women were allowed were given an additional thing, they are again rolling back. Inevitably, also, the interesting part of human history is it is circular. More often than not, wherever we start, we come back to the same place. And what we are seeing the world today, it seems that we have unlearned everything and we are starting from the scratch again. For example, human being understood the fact that wars was never a solution, because after having two world wars and millions of people dying, we are coming back to war being the only solution for all our problems. So somehow history has this amazing way of coming back. In 60s, where the first estimation of global migrant population by sex are available, for women comprised 46.6%. Today, it would be about 48.9 or 49% or something. One common narrative from academic migration scholars has been the feminization of international migrants during economic globalization over the last few decades. We are also forgetting the fact that this globalization has also led to a lot of single women going abroad or going internationally for studies. Education, besides work, education is another place. But more than education, today we have a whole lot of single women moving out for travel. That has changed. Tripled in the last 60 years, rising from 46 million in 1960 to 135 million in 2020. Large rise in number of male migrants and expansion of the number of countries and the general increase in the level of global population. So all these things are happening parallelly. So there are some figures in terms of share of immigrants, male, female. Middle East, if you see, the males are much higher than the females. Central Europe, Europe and Central Asia, almost the same. North America, females are more over a period of time. By far, Sub-Saharan also, if you see, females are less, but the trends are very uniform. Middle East and North Africa seems to be the only exception and outlier. There is this UN DESA, Department of Economic and Social Affairs. You can go on their site and you can see that there are certain things which are more for academic things. They are not to be used either for for your examination or in your assignments. You can pick this data up and quote them. Always, whenever you're picking data from any source, be it a book or from internet, please, in your assignments, always make sure to cite the author. Do not pick up anything on the internet, remember, is copyrighted. So if you are picking up if you are crafting an answer from the internet, please make sure that to cite the source. For example, here I am citing UN DESA 2020. And as far as possible, in your end term examination, when you're writing an examination, if you are able to remember a source, quote it. Otherwise, say scholars or an academician, or as it is quoted. So whatever you can remember, try and quote it, try and cite it. It's always good to cite. Okay, sex-specific migration trends. Growth of female migrants in recent years seen in North Africa and parts of Europe is due to a number of factors. Tend to be older than elsewhere due to migration policies that have encouraged migration and allow permanent settlement. And so again, there are multiple factors why whatever is. Why certain trends? Why, for example, earlier there was a large migration which happened from, let's say, Kerala, which went into Gulf states, Gulf Cooperation Cooperation Councils or states. Today, a large part of the Kerala migration is not happening to the Gulf, but to Europe. One of the factors is the fact that in Gulf, however number of years you stay, you can never get a citizenship. So Looking at that, a lot of migration today is happening not to the Gulf, but to Europe, where you can get a citizenship. Role of longer female life expectancy extended to increase relative size of older. So there are multiple factors. So anytime you look at a particular why migration or how. So for example, when the Russian-Ukraine war broke out in 2022, early 2022, I think most of Indians woke up to find out there are 20,000 Indian students studying in Ukraine, which itself showed the fact that there is a problem. There is an educational problem in the country. Because if 20,000 students are studying medicine in Ukraine, there is a problem. And that is the reason why migration data in terms of flows and stock need to be constantly collected to be able to make a policy. In many Western countries, increasing aging population, change in labor force perception, participation rates of native population has led to demand for workers in healthcare. So, for example, one of the direct reasons of an aging population is healthcare. Healthcare industry is predominantly women-based. Domestic industry, healthcare industry is predominantly women-based. And then you will see countries like Philippines have a large women population which is doing healthcare in Europe and the Western countries. For example, in India, a large number of nurses used to earlier come from Kerala. Today, those nurses are migrating abroad. In fact, now in hospitals in North India, I see less of Keralite nurses and more of North Indian nurses. The patterns have shifted. So unless there are scholars or academicians doing research, you won't even know how the patterns have shifted because inevitably people plug into information networks. And today with transnationalism, as I keep using the word beyond the nation, uh, information is there for people to find. So if a person finds that there is a better opportunity somewhere, he or she will pick up that opportunity, and it becomes then a loss for the home country. Increase in demand for female workers has also been evident in wealthier countries across Asia. Migrant women are concentrated in jobs regarding as low skills such as domestic workers, entertainers, hostess, restaurant, hotel staff, assembly line workers in clothing and electronics. So migration patterns are also, you can also then determine in terms of how the economy is moving, which industry is coming. There is a constant churn today globally. And what has happened because of factors like globalization, where we are interconnected, uh, advancements in information technology has led to more information being available. For example, immigrant populations in Middle East and North Africa have been predominantly male since 1990, has risen sharply, driven by demand in the Gulf Cooperation Council for labor in industries such as oil and gas and construction. So now this particular war which is happening in the Middle East is affecting the global economy. And more often than not, the demographic changes and the economic shocks will happen in the next decade. Suddenly the Gulf is no longer a very viable or an attractive option for a lot of migrants, especially European and American. Small scale of female migrant workforce in this country, they make up 46.8% of all female workers in Arab state. So there is a very minuscule difference, 2%, 3%. In North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, the excess number of male migrants are results of moves within the continent where men have traditionally migrated alone to pursue employment. Increased willingness for females in Africa to migrate for work or study and larger female African refugees population compared to male. And these are also older figures. So if you want the newer figures, you would have to go. Rise in females moving abroad for work and have a substantial impact on family dynamics and coming. And then you have to look at the impacts of this migration. The impact of a male migration is different from the impact of a female migration. Female migrants from Southeast Asia working as domestic workers often are abroad for long extended periods where children are left behind, are cared for grandparents, acting as surrogate parents. Philippines being a classic example. In fact, Philippines GDP or the Philippines economy is a large proportion of the economy is based on migrant workers. Because remember, these migrant workers sent remittances back home. Nepal's, I think, GDP is in double figures of remittances. India's remittances are also one of the highest, 3% of GDP or 2% something. India is the highest in terms of migrants today in the world and in terms of remittances which are coming from these migrants. Females from countries such as Philippines and Indonesia make up for most female-dominated migration corridors, such as migrant population in Hong Kong, Singapore, and UAE. Nurses from Philippines moving to US. So when you do individual case studies for countries, for communities, you will see patterns, how these are happening. And everything, there's a history behind it, how this happened. Female Canadian migration population in US has built over a long history, consistently outnumbered the Canadian male migrant population. Sex and gender shape all stages and categories of migration, including voluntary and forced. Dimension associated with complex interplay of gender and migration to formulate effective policy. Inevitably, all this information helps a nation form a policy. So, International Organization for Migration, you can, if you are interested, you can go and check out their website. There is a lot of data they put on migration, roles, expectation, and relationships and power dynamics associated with being a man, woman, boy, or a girl affects all aspects of migration process, can also be affected in new ways by migration. These are complex interrelated relationships. Challenges faced by women migrant workers in global south can be differentiated from global north. Okay, now the concept of global north and global south is it's not a physical north and south. Global north and global south are differentiated in terms of the economics. Well-off countries are typically categorized as global north, which includes countries like Japan, the Europe, the Americas. The global south are more of the developing, underdeveloped countries which have, and global south were most of the countries which were colonized. Global north were a lot of these countries colonized the global south. That's how the categorization is. Broad issues relating to gender equality can be observed cutting across countries. UN report. There are inequalities in political powers. There are inequalities within households, decision making, access to resources. And all these then affect the migration process, because remember, this affects agency. One of the factors of agency is economic independence. If you are economically dependent, more often than not, it is difficult to have an agency. And one of the reasons why this is happening is there is, say, for example, look at India itself. There was a move to try and reserve certain 33% seats in the parliament for women. It didn't go through because, for a simple reason, the political parties could not come to a consensus, in spite of the fact that women are almost half of this country. The representation is, and you see in the political system, there are political parties across the spectrum where the women would be elected, but it will be the men who will govern. So that makes the system unequal. Differences in legal status and entitlement. And all these then go on to affect the women and her status in terms of in a country or in a migration condition. Gender division of labor within the economy. Women are also more likely than men to be in low paid job and non-standard work. Less access than male to productive assets such as education, skill, property, and credit. So, for example, women in the rural areas inevitably do not get, for example, milk. The milk is given to boys unless the family is well off to give the girls a milk when they are young. Healthcare access is given first to boys and then to girls. So there is an inequality. Inequalities in domestic unpaid sector. In Global South, women have been involved in caring for family, nurturing the family, food preparation, laundry, childcare. For example, we always say, she's a housewife, essentially saying that she's not employed. And that's why the term homemaker, or, typically to denote the fact that the housework is an economic activity. So this is a part of the gender and inequalities. Then there is violence against women, gender-based violence, including domestic violence, intimate partner, ethnic cleansing, use as a weapon by enemy army, sexual exploitation. There's a discriminatory attitude, gender stereotyping is in people's ideas. So these are multiple inequalities, and these are across cultures. It's not that you witness it only in India. It's across cultures. In India also, it is across regions. Various inequalities in different form. Migration data in terms of gender dynamics at global level, nearly half of the women are women and girls. We have seen that before. Some data, 2020, total number of migrants 280 million. Out of it, 145 million are women, 145 million are men, 134 million are women. So a large proportion of migrants are women. Gendered causes and impacts of migration. Income generation, family unification, gender discrimination and norms, trafficking. Now, this is a new word that you're coming across, trafficking. Trafficking of human beings happen when humans are taken by deceit or by force. They are taken out of a particular country and then pushed into forced work. That's called human trafficking. There is another term that you will come across, which is human smuggling, where human beings give smugglers who then will smuggle those human beings across international borders. The difference between smuggling and trafficking is smuggling is what the normal smuggling is. It's an illegal entry into another country. That's it. Whereas trafficking involves an illegal entry, but the person is put into forced labor, like a bonded labor for life, unless they are rescued. And
Is smuggling with the consent of the person who's being smuggled?
Smuggling is by consent. So, for example, there are cases whereby, and you would have seen that in the news item, that Indians use something called a donkey route to travel into the US.
Okay.
That is typically smuggling. You are clandestinely going into another country without valid documents.
Okay.
Now, in smuggling, there's a consent from the person who wants to get smuggled. In case of trafficking, there is no consent. The person who's trafficked does not even know they are trafficked.
Okay. Yeah, I understand it now.
It's like the sex industry. And again, stereotypically, we all understand a lot of women in the sex industry are one who are forced into the sex industry. But you will be surprised to know a whole lot of people in the agriculture labor and industrial labor are also forced without any recourse. They are trafficked. So trafficking may not be international. Traffic can be internal too. In fact, there was this news item, I think a month back, where there was this political party MLA or somebody who had these people who were working as bonded labor in his house or is in factory or in the brick kilns. Brick kilns typically are notorious for having bonded labor. Gendered impact of is that clear, Nikita?
Yes, I understood.
Okay. Gendered impact of migration include impacts on migrants themselves, migration and gender relations, contradictory effects of migration. So there was this, in fact, if you search on YouTube, there was this documentary made on Keralite nurses who went to Germany in the 60s. And they went and settled out there. Now, when they came in the marriageable age, they married Keralite men from back home. When these men went to Germany, they could not reconcile themselves out there because patriarchy in Kerala was different than the culture in Germany. So a lot of these men, killed their wives, abused their wives. A lot of them killed themselves. There's a change of culture. The gender relations, they could not understand the fact that they had to work. So a lot of Indian men, when this Indian women or men, Indian women marry Indian men and take them abroad, these men are not able to adjust because they cannot understand the concept of an equality in gender relation, of let's say doing housework, and it leads to a domestic abuse situation. And that is why these NRI marriages, this trend about getting these boys and girls who are outside to come and marry in the country, many a times leads to disasters because there's a cultural disconnect which happens affecting gender relations. Research study on social capital and refugee integration in UK find women refugees fared less well in terms of emotional and physical health than their male counterpart. One of the reasons is the fact that male identifies with their work. More often than not, women accompany as a spouse. There is no work to give an identity to the women. The culture is different. There are no social, circuits to help the women ride over the cultural change, and inevitably the emotional physical health suffers. There's a different language, there's a different culture, there are different mannerisms. And inevitably, that's why migration is a very difficult process, because there's a cost on the person. Two 2002 to 2020-21 total case for so here was the trafficking. So this is different. Women are more vulnerable and prone to trafficking due to various reasons. There was this news item about how these women from Punjab uh, were were taken to the Gulf area for work, and they got stuck out there, and they were abused, and then it was difficult for them to come back. So in a way, they were trafficked because they were taken by deceit. This is the news items. Women from Punjab sold to locals in Oman, says rescued women. Agents lured, trafficked unaware women to Oman. Lucrative job offers. Now, inevitably, understand the fact, whenever there is a situation of poverty, situation of unemployment, situation of, let's say, not enough food on the table, it's very easy to lure such people. So that is where welfare measures, safety net are attractive in the Western countries. Then there was a major effect of COVID-19 pandemic on women, because inevitably, whenever the firing used to happen, the first people to go were the women. There was a study which was done. COVID-19 actually led to increase of domestic violence because men and women were in close proximity in the house. Immigrant women in Canada adversely affected by pandemic, layoff, decreased availability of short-term opportunities, delayed careers. Women get unduly affected than men. Central and East Europe have been most affected. Many women migrate got isolated, trapped with abusers in their workplace, homes because of pandemic. So if you're answering a question where they're asking you how does women get affected, you can always give the example of a COVID. As I said, if you will relate, whenever you're answering a question, if you relate to your own self and give an example, the examiner understands that you have understood the topic. ILO, International Labour Organization, has gender equality provisions. They've got something called Decent Work Agenda, productive work for women and men in conditions of freedom, fundamental conventions. So some of the conventions are there's a equal. I don't think so. You need to remember these conventions. You could, if you remember it, you can quote it. If there is a question which says how do international organizations, enable women in terms of equality, you can quote, or you can say ILO as the nodal organization in terms of work related, have these conventions in terms of equality of work, prohibition and immediate action of elimination of work, former child labor. Gender data is essentially to understand the complexity involved in migration, formulate evidence-based policies. Inevitably, if you are not measuring it and you are coming out with policy prescriptions or rhetoric, it's a political rhetoric. So all those, politicians or the rhetoric which talks about immigrants affecting your community, immigrants destroying your culture, is all political rhetoric because there is no evidence to it. In fact, evidence very clearly states that immigration is good for any country. The more immigrants you have, the better your economy will be. All studies across the world has shown that immigration is always good for the economy. Not only good for the economy, it is good for innovation, it is good for a lot of things. There are small variety of collection of sex-specific migration flow data in comparison to migrant stock data, number of migration flow data estimates and collection without any breakdown by sex. So unless there is more micro granular data, inevitably the policies always remain flawed. Migrant stock is published by UNDESA, Department of Economic and Social Affairs, produces estimate of global migrant labor population. Remember, these are models based on sample data. So they are largely accurate, but you can't come down to the last one person. Challenges: 5 significant gaps in production and collection of inclusive sex and gender disaggregated data. It is difficult because inevitably you can see how many people. For example, if I was to collect data today in a metro travel, let's say a Delhi metro travel, it will be how many people. They are not segregating the data based on males or females or gender. And inevitably, then they are not able to figure out if how to make a policy with respect to greater mobility for women. For example, Delhi government did a very interesting experiment in the last government which was there in Delhi. They came out with this agenda, with this policy whereby they said all women travel in DTC buses is free. And what they did was to figure out how many women are traveling. They issued these paper tickets, which were just token tickets. So it was a great way of collecting data in terms of how many women are traveling. It also was a data in figuring out what distances are these women traveling. And in fact, it was found that with enabling women to travel freely in buses, improved the security of travel. More women came and traveled during all times of the day. More women started coming in the workforce because they were able to travel without bothering about the cost of travel, which is what the New York Mayor Mamdani has proposed and is executing in terms of travel in public transport, free public transport for all. Because if you are allowing mobility, then you are actually increasing the economic activity of people. And this argument about who will pay is a wrong argument, because what else is the government for? If it's not able to enhance mobility, because mobility always will lead to betterment of economy. Similarly, migration will always lead to betterment of economy of a country. Gaps in data on the intersectional experience of women and people with diverse gender identities. Inconsistency in type and frequencies of measurement. Lack of capacity of national statistical offices and data system. Challenges in relation to transparency, accountability, and ethics in migration data. And you see that in your cities, you see that in your communities. How is the data collected? How is gender specific data collected? Has anybody asked in terms of women what is the problems they face in a workplace or in a public transport? There is no data being collected. So when data is not being collected, the policies which are rolled out inevitably are skewed. Case study of Philippines government has played an instrumental role in facilitating immigration and creating demand for Filipino women migrant workers. There's a pre-department departure orientation seminars conducted by government. Philippines depends a large part of its economy on the remittances by these workers. So they have made it a foreign policy issue. Data management through various agencies, Department of Labor, Philippines Overseas Employment Administration. Overseas, there are approximately 2.2 million overseas Filipino workers. 56% has been higher than the male, which is 44%, because they are in a caregiving industry. Most preferred destination countries include Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Kuwait, Qatar. So you see that has also changed, because earlier Filipino women were there in US, which has now, I think, been taken over by Mexicans and the Latinos. Main occupation category for Philippine women include jobs as domestic workers, nurses. Free boarding and lodging, pocket money and time off to attend language courses, and in return they're expected to help with childcare and share in light. Now the implications of these Filipino women working out, migrating out, is on families, where the father and the children, the male households are there where the father is taking care of the children. There is emotional and psychological effects on the children. Remember, migration will work on the migrant as well as the family. Financial contribution, women migrant workers are also known for sharing values and idea, migrant activism and leadership, caregiving of young ones, domestic tutor, constant companion. So there are consequences of this migration. I think this case study is there in the self-learning module, so you can just go through it. Let's sum up. Complex interrelationship between gender and migration to history and demographic associated with gender migration data. ILO has developed crucial provisions for gender equality, case study of Philippines, with specific reference to its migration governance. Migration governance is how you are able to govern a particular process. What are the processes? And the more transparent the process is, and the more the better you will have a policy or a system to be able to manage migration. Women, especially of working age, this is a Hindu article, comprise greater share, but there's little dialogue and flawed data on this important issue. And this is not just with India. A lot of countries, fail in this collecting of data. Because a lot of policy planners today seem to be, working in absolute fuzzy logic. Because there is, unless you have evidence-based policy making, you will always fail. And that is why you will see most of our cities are always on the edge, because there is no policy, evidence-based policy making. There are some references and suggested readings. You can see it in the SLM, in the self-learning module. Okay, I have come to an end. Oh, hi. Hi, Sasya. Good to see your face. Let me show you my face also. That's me.
Checked out on the internet.
Okay, wonderful. My pictures are there. So any questions? Any questions before we call it a day?
Quite interesting, actually. Gender is quite to be very honest, I was also very thinking where, like you said, we tend to think about male part in migration and stuff. It's quite interesting what you shared today.
So what will happen, Sasya, is as you will go through multiple units by me and by my colleague, and also you will go through your own reading, and then you will start looking and then interlinking that. A lot of these topics are interlinked. There's a lot of repetitions in the SLM units, because a simple reason, SLMs have been written by various academicians, so there is a lot of repetition. But if you overcome that repetition and look at the interrelation, and then read a little bit about it, you will start looking at things in a very different way. And that's what's typically an academics is supposed to do. You are supposed to get, in academics, there's nothing right or wrong. As I keep telling my students, you people are much more experienced and older in terms of understanding this. So I teach a lot of undergraduates and graduate students, and I keep telling them, I said, there's nothing right and wrong in academics. Or in the world, there is nothing right and wrong. There are all shades. One has to get multiple perspectives to come to a judgment as to how you feel this is right, and then that also becomes contextual based on time and place.
So true. Yeah. I got it.
Nikita, any question?
No, sir, it's quite clear now.
Okay, wonderful. So have a wonderful whatever is left of the weekend, and have a wonderful next week ahead. I'll see you next Saturday at 12 for MDI 1, and again at next Saturday 5 o'clock for the next class. Okay?
Definitely.
Bye bye then. Nice meeting you. Bye guys.
Nice
Thank you, sir.
seeing you.
Bye bye.